This is, I think, my favorite moment of the 5th Democratic primary debate, which we had last night. You're going to see Tulsi Gabbard get into it with Mayor Pete. Now, as you're watching this, whenever they show Mayor Pete's face, particularly towards the end here when the argument heats up, look at his face. Pay close attention to Mayor Pete's face. Because one of the takeaways I had on this is, as Tulsi continues to pummel him, you can see in real time, like the whole politician persona, the whole politician facade, like, oh, look at me, I'm serious. You see that melt away. And you see his face like he's angry, like this is getting real to him. Like you're popping the bubble I've built around myself as like this super on point politician who's really smart and who's, surging in the polls in Iowa. You could see that he's like, she's getting in the way. Stop getting in the way. But he doesn't have logical responses. So he tries to hang in there and fights back and goes to the standard smear, which they've been going at, Tulsi with from the beginning. Just like stale nonsense. What about Assad? Like so dumb. And then when Tulsi responds to that and destroys him, you see him at the end. He's got the look like a scared little boy. And then he says like, I get to respond to that, right? And then it like that kind of trails off. And then you hear Bernie like chime in like, so what I would say. And, he kind of changes the topic and goes off on something else. But you see that Mayor Pete, at the end, he really didn't have anything to respond with. You want to know why? He's an empty suit, and he was just obliterated on live TV. So anyway, take a look at this, and then we're going to discuss.
Pete, you'll agree that the service that we both have provided to our country as veterans by itself does not qualify us to serve as Commander-in-Chief. I think the most recent example of your inexperience in national security and foreign policy came from your recent careless statement about how you as president would be willing to send our troops to Mexico to fight the cartels. As Commander-in-Chief, leader of our armed forces, I bring extensive experience serving for 7 years in Congress, on the Foreign Affairs Committee, on the Armed Services Committee, on the Homeland Security Committee, meeting with leaders of countries around the world, working with military commanders of different commands, dealing with high-level national security briefings, understanding what's necessary, the preparation that I've gotten to walk in on day one to serve as Commander-in-Chief.
Congresswoman, thank you. Mr. Mayor, I'll allow you to respond.
I know that it's par for the course in Washington to take remarks out of context, but that is outlandish even by the standards of today's politics.
Are you saying that you didn't say that?
I was talking about U.S.-Mexico cooperation. We've been doing security cooperation with Mexico for years, with law enforcement cooperation and a military relationship that could continue to be developed with training relationships, for example. Do you seriously think anybody on this stage is proposing invading Mexico?
That's not what I said.
I'm talking about building up alliances. And if your question is about experience, let's also talk about judgment. One of the foreign leaders you mentioned meeting was Bashar al-Assad. I have, in my experience, such as it is, whether you think it counts or not, since it wasn't accumulated in Washington, enough judgment that I would not have sat down with a murderous dictator like that.
Congresswoman Gabbard, let me allow you to respond.
Thank you. You were asked directly whether you would send our troops to Mexico to fight cartels, and your answer was yes. The fact checkers can check this out. No. But your point about judgment is absolutely correct. Our Commander-in-Chief does need to have good judgment. And what you've just pointed out is that you would lack the courage to meet with both adversaries and friends to ensure the peace and national security of our nation. I take the example of those leaders who have come before us, leaders like JFK, who met with Khrushchev, like Roosevelt, who met with Stalin,
like Donald Trump,
Reagan,
who met with Kim.
who met like Reagan, who met and worked with Gorbachev. These issues of national security are incredibly important. I will meet with and do what is necessary to make sure that no more of our brothers and sisters in uniform are needlessly sent into harm's way fighting regime change wars that undermine our national security. I'll bring real leadership and experience to the White House.
I've got to respond.
Senator Sanders, I'm going to have
a original point.
Oh, the face that Mayor Pete makes as he realizes that she's not going to back down and she's going to keep hitting him. You see the politician persona melt off in real time, and he looks like a scared little boy. Oh, yes. That was wonderful. I enjoyed every second of that. Okay, so let's go through this. Mayor Pete does this thing all the time, and it drives me crazy because it's so scripted, where he goes, I know that this is par for the course in Washington. Okay, I get it. You're trying to do the whole, like, who, me, bro? I'm an outsider, and I'm not part of, like, Washington, D.C. Pete, here's the problem with that. Being an insider has nothing to do with where you are geographically. Being an insider is a set of policy goals. That's what it's a philosophy. So, you know who's an insider, for example? Howard Schultz. Even though he was saying, oh, I'm going to run as an outsider. I might run as an independent in this election. Now, thankfully, he was shamed out of the race, but he was pretending like he's an outsider when his ideology represented continuing the status quo perfectly. You're the same thing, Pete. As he ironically goes like, oh, all the people in Washington, D.C. are so out of touch and so wrong. And that's why I'm here to bring us right back to 1992, New Democrat neoliberalism, corporate centrism. Your ideology is the status quo in Washington, D.C. So it doesn't matter how much you say, like, oh, look at these people in Washington, D.C. That doesn't matter because it's just a tap dance. It's a show. It's theater you're putting on. It's a polished talking point that you're using. But it makes no sense because you represent the status quo in Washington, D.C. way more than Tulsi does. So that I'm so sick of that because it's such like a shortcut in a discussion. Like, you think you just be like, Washington. And like, that's enough where everybody's like, oh yeah, this guy must be right. Like, no. It makes sense to go after Washington and it makes sense to, you know, portray yourself as an outsider, but you have to represent an outsider ideology. You have to represent a break from the corruption. Do you know who in this race is the number one recipient of billionaire money? Who has more billionaire donors than anybody else on stage? Mayor Pete. So he's a fraud. He's a con man. That's what this guy is. And then Tulsi says to him, are you saying that you didn't say that? And if you go back and watch, you'll notice he didn't say no. Mayor Pete gives away the game really quickly if you're willing to pay attention. Because he'll be asked direct questions and he never gives a direct answer. An honest person would give a direct answer up front, yes or no, and then you go with your answer. He never gives the direct answer up front. He goes right into his tap dance. So she says, are you saying you didn't say that? And he doesn't say yes or no. By the way, he did say that. Now, afterwards, after there were a bunch of articles written where the media, which is, by the way, overwhelmingly kind to Mayor Pete, but even they were like, you want to send U.S. troops to Mexico? That's what you want to do? Even they were like, wow, that's crazy. What did he do? His team goes into damage control, and they go out there. No, see, what happened was the sun was in my eyes, and I didn't mean that. What I said, what I meant was the opposite, and that we'd end the drug war. You just said you would continue to fight the drug war and send U.S. troops to Mexico to do so. That's what you said. You know who else said that recently? Tom Cotton. Neocon, right-wing, insane person. So now you said it, you get caught when you say it. Now, the media, it's Trumpian, the media, fake news, took me out of context. No, they didn't. I saw the clip. You said it. So, oh my God, that's so frustrating. And then, of course, Mayor Pete has nowhere to go. You want to know why? Because he's an empty suit. He's an empty suit. So what does he do? Assad. Oh my God, you guys are so sad. The number one thing they go after Tulsi for, and by the way, it's not like I have no criticisms of Tulsi. I have many criticisms of Tulsi, and I voiced them on the show. But the number one thing that they choose to go after for, you met with bad man. He was very bad and you met with him. Maybe you like bad man and agree with him. Maybe you think dictators are good and you support them. This is the same stupid playbook that everybody used back before the 2003 invasion of Iraq, when if you said, I don't think we should go in there and topple him, what did everybody say? Dictator lover, Saddam Hussein apologist. You bad man. You think bad man is good man. I think bad man is bad man. Oh, you're so fucking genius. You're so high-minded. What a great argument. I mean, this is like grade school politics, and it's embarrassing and it's shameful, but here's what I guarantee you. After this, everybody in mainstream media is going to be like, oh, Mayor Pete won that exchange when he said Assad. And this is how mainstream media functions as rank propaganda. Because any actual person watching that was like, ooh, Tulsi's kind of bodying him right now. But the media will 100% put their spin on it. And indeed they were, right after. But Tulsi definitely got the best in that exchange. And then, of course, the best moment by far and away was, she's like, yeah, of course I'm going to meet with bad people, because as president, that would be part of my job, to de-escalate, to try to find peace. You don't only meet with your friends. How ridiculous would that be? She says JFK met with Khrushchev, Roosevelt met with Stalin, Reagan met with Gorbachev. You're saying you don't have the courage to meet with our adversaries. That's what you're saying right now. And what does he say? Trump met with Kim. And that's like the least bad thing Donald Trump has ever done in the White House, you absolute monumental moron, fraud, con man. Do you understand that, Pete? You're a total fraud. You're a complete charlatan con man. Donald Trump met with Kim. I don't meet with bad people because bad people are very bad. Let me go back into my politician talking points. Except, again, watch it over. Because you see, in no uncertain terms there, he can't keep the facade going. You see the politician, mask fall off as Tulsi keeps pummeling him and pummeling him and pummeling him. And he's like, and then at the very end, again, he says, I have to respond to that. You ain't got nothing to say, dog. You ain't got nothing to say, fam. It is over. You got nothing to say. And that's when Bernie chimes in, and you see how quickly Pete lets it go because he's got nothing to say. What are you going to say? What are you going to say? What are you going to go back to? Assad again. So, you messed up, man. You stepped into her wheelhouse. When you decided, let me keep going down this foreign policy path. So, listen. He's a joke. He represents no change. He represents the status quo. And Tulsi did a number on him here. This is exactly what Tulsi did to Kamala. This is a same feel, same vibe. Now, again, the first time I watched it, maybe because I'm always critical of the people who I like more, but the first time I watched it, I was like, I don't know, maybe 50-50 or 60-40. Tulsi just barely clipped him out there. But no. When I watched this the second time and now the third time, you can see that Mayor Pete literally doesn't know how to handle when somebody's making poignant objections to him. So now, final point I'll make here is, what on earth do you think would happen if it was Mayor Pete and Donald Trump on stage? You saw he became a scared little boy on minimal pushback from Tulsi. What would happen with Trump? I'm going to go right back in, Mr. Trump, this is the problem with Washington. Oh, come on, man. There's a reason. Everybody was speculating. Why is Mayor Pete at 0% with black voters? I don't know. Maybe because he's terrible? Why is Mayor Pete doing really bad with younger voters? I don't know. Maybe because they see through his nonsense, and when push comes to shove, they see he represents nothing, no change, the status quo. Tulsi, wonderful job. I'm so happy that she did this. Mayor Pete, you dropped your ass. Go try to find it and pick it up.